The DNA you're born with is the DNA you die with. It will always be the same tool with the same document to read. Just different questions, different stage of your life, different problems, different opportunities. Chronic diseases, it's optional if you know what causes it.
Kash Khan is a celebrity longevity coach, TEDx speaker, and founder of the DNA Company.
The big one that comes to mind is around the BRCA gene in breast cancer. The BRCA gene is a tumor suppressor. It does not cause cancer. It's the primary tool your body uses to fight cancer. The doctor that told her, cut your breasts off, if you were to ask him, how does BRCA cause cancer? He would not be able to answer the question because it's not true. A symptom, a disease is a check engine light. It's like, investigate. You're doing something wrong. If I have your DNA, I can tell you your personality. That's who you are. That's how you do the job. Whatever's crushing you is actually your superpower.
How does belief impact our genetic expression?
The single biggest contributor to the expression of negative disease-causing genes is
DNA genetically determined? Does it have to be our destiny?
So you got to step back in terms of what is genetics. I think there's a misinterpretation of what these things do.
Yeah.
And that is because most of the research came from a very disease-centric setting. A gene equals a problem, right? Without incorporating how does lifestyle, nutrition, and environment influence a gene.
Yeah.
So there's this argument, is it genetics, is it epigenetics? It's the combination of both. And most of the genes that were studied and researched were disease-causing genes. Like when a gene expresses, something turns on. Versus everyday biology. You're making hormones every day, you're detoxifying chemicals every day, you're thinking every day. That's always on. You don't need to, you can turn the volume, but you can't turn it on and off, right? So with that set of genes, the functional genes, it is somewhat deterministic. That's who you are. That's how you do the job. If I have your DNA, I can tell you your personality to a T, for example. It's accurate, right? When it comes to the rare disease-causing genes, things that turn on and off, it is a combination of who you're innately wired to be, and then what are you doing with that? You have a genetic superpower. Did you use it? Did you not know it? Did you turn it into a kryptonite because you didn't understand it? So step one is understanding what is the wiring, right? Then you know what choices to make.
Yeah. What is the wiring? How do we express this superpower? We all have proclivities towards addiction or hypervigilance or overworking, overspending.
Yeah.
There's a lot of personality attributes that can be really pinned down to the piano keys, the DNA itself. And we're going to talk about my results today, which is super cool and also vulnerable. But there's no shame to this game. Like understanding your DNA is actually super empowering. There's no shame to it. There's nothing to hide. So I want to go back to what you said, the superpower aspect. How do we know if we're not expressing our DNA, our genetic superpower?
It's a question of context. So we all have wiring that is meant to be a gift. And if you're in the wrong context, it feels bad. Anxiety, depression, burnout. This is taking a tool and putting it in the wrong job. So as an example, there's wiring around, and by the way, this is you, right? Ooh. There was a time when I was working with the Navy SEALs in San Diego. So the question was, why do some of these soldiers come back with trauma and some don't? PTSD, diagnosable, prescribable, what's going on, right?
Yeah.
Same training, same food, same exposure. And the answer is kind of in the question, same, but they're different people. How do you expect the same outcome, right? And so there was two layers to what we found genetically driving it. And this again was meant to be their strength, meant to be their superpower, thrown into the wrong context, right? So when you are in active deployment, pull the trigger, see the bomb go off, that is a moment of adrenaline surging, right? So the gene that regulates adrenaline is called ADRA2B, ADRA2B, and it determines firstly, to what level of intensity did you feel that adrenaline rush, right? Do you seek it? Do you chase it? Or is it blasé, you don't notice it, right? More vanilla. And also the second intention of adrenaline, one is for the intensity to upregulate your biology. You're bigger, stronger, faster temporarily.
Yeah.
Second intention is it imprints information because that moment was such a big deal to make sure you don't make that mistake again. Because your body doesn't know what that is. Maybe that was a tiger chasing you and trying to eat you, right? So on one end, upregulated for intensity. On second end, upregulated for information encoded and remembered so that if I see that person, that face again, I don't do it again. We found that the soldiers that had PTSD, this was half of the story, like yourself, had a dysregulation in adrenaline. So the intensity was heavier, but they also imprinted more, including the emotion. So when they went through whatever, the next time they saw it, they felt it like it was happening again. It was like a continuation.
It's almost like they time traveled.
Yeah. Yeah. There was no gap between the moment and the current memory. Right. And so that recall, which was supposed to be purely intellectual, also happened emotional, looks like something you would call PTSD. Right. Now layer on top of that what you would call a shell shock. So soldiers experience trauma, but they also experience shell shock, frozen, stuck, can't process, can't move forward. So BDNF is the key fertilizer that drives neurogenesis, neural development, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It's like the ingredient that makes you build new neurons. When you learn something new, when you believe something new, when you adapt a new skill, and the time lapse for that processing is different for us based on that genetic superpower, right? So suppose you have the adrenaline dysregulation, I feel more and I remember the feeling. And second, you have the BDNF dysregulation, there's a lag time for me to process. So I experience a shell shock, which means that exact thing feels like it has more weight and meaning than to somebody else who processes quickly. So who's right and wrong? Nobody, right? Now, if you take that profile and throw someone on the battlefield, you're going to have words like PTSD come out of it, right? Or you have two options. That was my superpower. Like you, emotional intelligence, work for purpose, right? People can feel when they talk to you.
Yeah.
Because that's who you are. You work through the lens is what does this feel like, right? But put that in the wrong context, you will use words like PTSD and trauma, etc. It had an intention, it had a purpose, emotional leadership, empathy, right? But it turns into a crutch if you use it wrong. So you either don't do it, or you realize I need to do this, I have no choice. Here's the exact nutrients, lifestyle, supplements that upregulate the gene pathway to give me what I need. And there's no right or wrong answer. It's who am I, what's the context, or add the things in the epigenetic expression to give me the volume that makes me capable of doing the job.
To me, this is the ultimate missing link. This entire conversation is so potent because I can't tell you how many people watch the show or comment and they're just stuck in loops.
Yeah.
Just loops over and over and over again. They have the desire to change their life. Yet, no matter how much they meditate or how much they do breath work or cold therapy or even plant medicine, they keep coming back around to the same identity. And I feel like I'll pass this to you. One thing that I'm fascinated by right now in my work is this concept of identity transformation, to actually go from a lower self with the acceptance of where you are and then being informed by a higher self. And so this has been written about for millennia. I mean, even the Essenes in ancient Egypt, everybody talks about this in spiritual development and personal growth, how to actually become or be the embodiment of the person you know you're capable of. But it's not just an emotional game. On the screen right now, y'all, is the wellness pentagon that we teach. So physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and financial nourishment of self. Right. The reason I put the physical at the bottom, and I'll give homage to Paul Chek, one of my mentors who taught me his quadrant, was because if the physical is not addressed first, the other four domains cannot be fulfilled. They cannot be actualized. So for someone like myself who came from a bipolar mother who probably experienced in utero trauma, I've noticed in my life I have a proclivity towards hypervigilance. On a epigenetic and genetic level, what's something that I get to know or that all of us get to know who struggle with hypervigilance at times? The feeling of the shoe's always going to drop. Yeah. How is that being expressed through our DNA, this hypervigilance aspect?
Oh, I can tell you that whenever I'm working with someone that's stuck, whether it's breast cancer, a pro athlete, stay-at-home mom that just doesn't feel, it's always nervous system first. Always, right? And most of them don't know that's what it is. When you're stuck in fight or flight, the body shifts its biological priorities, energy utilization changes. It shuts off your gut, your immune system, inflammation stays high, your body thinks you're in battle, it wants to be able to recover from injury. It's not conducive to regeneration and restoration, right?
Yeah.
So the genetic propensities are, for example, serotonin is a neurochemical. It's referred to as a happy hormone, right? What it actually does to decide whether or not you're happy is it helps your brain prioritize information. And that's not what we talk about because, again, research is all disease-centric, right? Find a depressed person, find the layer, now you equal. But what got them there? If your brain can't prioritize information because serotonin is lacking, either because you don't bind it or you don't make it, there's different genes for different parts of the cascade, then when you walk into a scenario and you're seeing the world at 130% of what's really going on, everything is irritating, everything is annoying, everyone's disappointing, and you're hyper vigilant, you become the helicopter mom. You become, no, it has to be on a 45-degree angle, and it has to be violet, and it has to be Thursday at 4:59 p.m. Right?
Yeah.
And like someone else was like, it's purple. What's the big deal?
Yeah.
Because they don't see 130%, they see 80% because of a single gene pathway determining how much information does their brain pay attention to. And when this is the lens you see through, you believe that that's true. And the other person believes what they see is true. And it just leads to friction, right? So why do I bring this one up? Because if you look at general population data, most people are wired like you, which is big picture strategy vision, right? Your serotonin regulation is great. Right? When I look at your genetics. So 95-ish%. This is the norm, right? Then you look at this, what I just described, the helicopter mom, it's like 5 to 7%. When I have a room full of people that are, say I may do like a genetic master class, a breast cancer class, for example, 200 people, 60 to 70% of them will have a serotonin dysregulation. So how do we get from the norm is 5 if you take 100,000 people to this room has 60? Because their nervous system is broken. And that's the thing that's blocking from all the supplements and all the biohacks from working, because they're not in a regenerative state. So yeah, if you don't understand the wiring and understand how you see the world and then address that, and just knowing, I can tell you, solves half the problem for people. Just knowing it's not right or wrong. It's not opinion. It's I just see the world different. And then they catch themselves in it. And it's like like any superhero has to turn the voices off in their head and come back down and talk to a human, right?
Yes.
It's kind of like that. Just knowing that you're seeing more, toning it down. And that's half of it. And then there are supplements you can do. And then there's things you can like context wise. But yeah, nervous system first.
If you've ever blown up your life for no logical reason, congratulations. Your biology works. You're not broken. You're just running an old pattern. After 10 years of podcasting and interviewing 800 plus of the sharpest minds and deepest hearts on planet Earth, I built something simple to help you interrupt these patterns fast. I kept running personally into the same stuff, and audience members would write to me and say, Josh, I'm dealing with the same core 3 things, which are expressed through emotional epigenetics that are our emotional patterns, our unconscious beliefs, and our environment. This self-liberation blueprint is a free training where you get clear on how these 3 areas are blocking your life, and in 10 days, you can move from being stuck and distorted on the inside to clear and on purpose on the outside. The self-liberation blueprint is a 10-day jumpstart that's perfect for the human being that feels stuck, but they just can't figure out why. Now, I built this with no smoke and mirrors. I know in our world, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors when it comes to personal growth and spiritual development. I built this with 24 years of my own health, wellness, and personal development life experience. So I can save you money and save you time and start getting your results as quickly as possible. On your first day, you're gonna go right into a self-assessment where we know exactly where you are and exactly where you get to be. We're gonna take you through a dream vision process and specific breath work to create your life vision that you desire in the future as if it's here right now. All of this is free because I'm here to give it to you as a mentor in the same way that my mentors gave it to me. It is purely just my gift to you. You also get free access to the Liberated Life Tribe, a community of people like you and I that are actually doing the inner work instead of just pretending that they're fine. By the time you're done, you're gonna know exactly where you are in your wellness pentagon, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and financially, and you're gonna have a map, a mindful action plan to move from clarity instead of distortion. This is not therapy for people that are broken. You're not broken. You're just bioenergetically burdened. And I'm here to tell you that removing these burdens is possible. And I believe you can do it. You don't need fixing. You just get to have a clear starting point and a plan that actually works with your biology. If you're ready to move forward with your life without forcing it, join me inside the Self-Liberation Blueprint by heading over to liberatedlife.com. Come join us. Yes, I love that you said the neural system first, because I think about all the different ways in which I've explored breath work. I've been teaching and experiencing breath work since 2016. It was like my neural system called me to it.
Yeah.
It knew that it was really good for me. And I would say for most of us, we hold our breath during conflict. I don't know if you can relate to this. Maybe you've never had a fight with your wife. But whenever we have fights with our loved ones, we'll have a tendency to hold our breath, which then from an excitatory standpoint puts us even more into sympathetic. And then how do we have conflict resolution from a sympathetic dominant neural system? It's almost impossible. You actually rewound a lot of things that were going on for your DNA. That's what got you into this work. You said, I learned my genetic code. I masterfully rewound my biological clock, eradicating chronic disease that once kept me captive. Can you share that?
So I did not come from the industry, right? And I think a lot of sort of wonderful functional medicine stories are the same, where somebody was stuck, doctors couldn't help them, and they figured it out, and now they want the world to know, right?
Sure.
So that's kind of what happened to me, which was I actually came from a very different industry. I built a marketing business in Toronto that helped tech startups grow. That's what I did, right? And we were doing really, really well, and I got sick. So I had eczema to the point where I couldn't open my left eye. It was like sealed shut. I had psoriasis, which is autoimmunity all over my body. Gut issues, depression, didn't want to get out of bed, migraines, I'd never been sick before, and then all this stuff all at the same time. So I started going to doctors, and every problem has a different doctor, and every problem has a different pill. And I was curious, like, what did I do? Like, it can't be serendipity. It's just all this stuff all at once, right? What did I do? What did I eat? Something must have caused all this.
Yeah.
And that was the first day I realized that that's not in the doctor's toolkit. Not the doctor's fault. They're just trained to diagnose and prescribe, right? But I wanted a functional answer. What did I do wrong? So I went down a rabbit hole of studying traditional Chinese medicine, naturopathy, homeopathy, functional medicine, eventually genetics. And my aha moment was I was on the same street as my business partner. We live 4 houses apart, same age, same ethnic background. We got married around the same time, same number of kids. We drove to work together every day. He was fine, and I was deathly sick. So I believed the doctors that this is you. Because if it was something I was doing, why wasn't he? We ate lunch together. We ate dinner together almost every day because we worked very hard, right? We're in the office all night. So my genetics showed me, step 1, there's a gene called GSTM1, which, by the way, you also have the same issue, is the primary driver of glutathione activity in your gut. So glutathione is this master antioxidant, neutralize and remove toxins from your body. And there's different genes that signal how it's utilized in different parts of your body. So respiratory, filter, gut, filter, right? This gene, there's a potential for a unique phenomenon called a copy number variation, where we think about SNPs and variants in genes, like what version of the gene. It's possible that you don't even have the gene. That's a copy number variation, 0 copies. So when I open up my human instruction manual, there's like pages missing called GSTM1, which is I don't detoxify my gut. So whatever plastics, additives, pesticides come along with food don't get filtered for me. So the exact same food that I was eating with a business partner, I didn't know that the seemingly healthy diet that we thought we were eating, which was a Mediterranean diet because a nutritionist friend told me to do that. In Canada, where I live, there's drying agents used on grains because we have long winters. And so the hummus that I was eating was laden with chemicals that if you were to test on the average person are fine. But if you were to test on me or you, would cause everything that I had, right? So I learned in that moment that there is a reason, there's a cause, right? And this was my sort of innate biological failure and my priority. So now I know what I eat is my decision on how fast I'm going to age and whether or not I have a chronic disease. So I pulled that back. And then that led me down rabbit holes of so many other gene pathways that told me why I was feeling poorly. And I don't have any conditions right now. In fact, I'm in better health now than back then, right? So yeah, it's in your control. Chronic diseases, it's optional if you know what causes it.
Is this part what really started to obsess you with your work? Obviously, the obsession came from necessity.
Yeah.
Like you wanted to be healthy, you wanted to be healed and whole.
Yeah.
Yet this, I guess you could say, SNP that was missing, the copy that was missing from your genetics, is that the one place that you found most of your obsession with DNA and understanding the DNA? Was it right there?
Right there, I realized that everything I thought was wrong. I had breast cancer in my family. My mom couldn't get out of bed because of arthritis. I used to visit her at her bedside. She now goes to a gym with her trainer. She's fine, right? My niece was failing school because of crushing anxiety. We were just talking about this, she's going to university now. She's fine, right? So it started with my own family. Then it turned into, I gave my keys to my business partner and said, I found my purpose. Now I know what I'm supposed to be working on, and I'm going to finish this. So at my dining room table for 6 months, PhDs, doctors, naturopaths, just building this crazy algorithm. We went through all the genes, because even genetics I found was broken. It was this very, this gene equals that, this gene equals that, when that's not what I discovered about myself. And I think looking from the outside in as a layperson, trying to solve the problem just like I did with technology companies, just solving problems.
Yeah.
I looked at the genes entirely differently, which is we already know the systems. We already understand biology. Why are we reinventing? overlay on the existing biology we understand, what step is driven by what gene. Then we know in this chain which link is broken, not this gene means this gene means this, right? It's all systems and pathways. So I built that algorithm. And then I just like, well, why did I do this? I don't even know what I'm doing with this algorithm. It was just a passion, right? That turned into a research company, that turned into testing globally, that turned into, I merged the company eventually with a telemedicine company to help it sort of get into the healthcare system. And now I teach.
I love that you said, all right, here's the keys. Was that a big gut check moment for you? You had built a huge company. You had to let it go. You chose to let it go.
It was very easy. It was when you feel a sense of purpose, it's easy. It's very easy. It did not feel like anything. Like people are like, where's your half? Where's your money? Why'd you sell it to him? Right? It didn't matter. I said, you keep it. I'm walking away. I wasn't supposed to walk away. So here's, in fairness to you, keep it.
Yeah. So in your family on paternal, maternal, was there entrepreneurial DNA there?
Yeah. So we are I am wired for what we call warrior genetics, right? And I didn't know until much later that my ancestors were royalty in Afghanistan from my mom's side and in battle all the time trying to defend whatever they owned, right? And so I'm kind of wired for that. And this is one of the reasons I was so sick. Again, talk about superpower and kryptonite. Dopamine is a neurochemical that allows you to experience satisfaction, right? Either from pleasure. We think of it as a pleasure chemical, but it's also a reward chemical, an achievement chemical. You don't need pleasure or reward. Either one will give you satisfaction through a receptor in your brain binding the dopamine, and eventually another gene breaking down the dopamine, and eventually another gene clearing the dopamine. And that's kind of what I said about you need to understand the biology first and then overlay the genes, right?
Yeah.
So that's the process. We anticipate, you can smell the tasty food, dopamine starts flowing, gets into the receptors, gets broken down, gets removed, and now you're back down to your baseline behavior. The genes that drive that, DRD2, makes the receptors. So you're not constantly experiencing it, it's when needed, right? So you can measure through genetics the density of receptors in the mind. How much do I get? And therefore, what level of intensity did I feel the satisfaction? You can also measure the speed at which you break down, remove, and clear. So there's a couple of genes in that pathway. So if I look at myself, now this is an area where we're polar opposite, right? So when I look at myself, my DRD2 gene is the absolute minimum. So my ability to feel the satisfaction is slim to none. My clearance is ultra rapid. And so when I look back at the time when I was in that tech business, like consulting all these companies, I was running 10 companies because it was never enough. And every shiny object was exciting. And part of why I was so sick, because I was burnt out. My nervous system was fried. Yeah. My brain was so capable of saying yes, 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 but my body wasn't different than anybody else's. I was completely fried and burnt out, but I couldn't perceive it. I was wired for warrior genetics, which is yes, do it and take the stress and not notice the stress and plow through it, right? So in this profile, the intention is reward-seeking behavior. When the tribe needs someone to step up and take the risk and lead, I'll do it. It was not meant to be entrepreneur with a free-for-all with no structure that's burnt out and fried, right? That's part of what made me so sick. Now that I know it, I have structure. Now I have people around me that are the naysayers.
They're your guardrails.
Yes. Yeah, that can help me focus.
Yeah.
And I also, my calendar is highly structured to help me execute and use my superpower, right? I'm the guy that filters opportunities, but they get dropped into some processing from the team to make sure that I'm not being a wacko again, right?
Yeah.
And so now we have structure to make it work. Now you, polar opposite, right? My profile, if you were to look it up academically, depending where you study, you could be told that I'm wired for depression, because I don't feel, or you can be wired for addiction, right? Those are the two things you would hear about me: addiction or depression. But that's again disease-centric thinking, which is where research dollars come from. The intention was achievement. I'm achievement-oriented, right? I seek reward constantly. That's why I'm wired this way. But if I don't use it properly, depression and addiction. Your profile is the polar opposite: the highest intensity of dopamine receptors and a very slow clearance.
Yes.
So that leads to what can look like addiction, but is binging behavior. So the difference between you and me is every shiny object is exciting for me. Like I can't filter, right? It looks like ADHD to people around me. For you, it's kind of the opposite, content. Things are good. I feel it and it's good and it lasts a long time. So I can also stay doing it for a while. I can focus and I can get it done. But the things that you're not interested in, there's no fire in the belly and it looks like procrastination. It looks like you're not interested. It looks like you're being flaky about it, right? Which, what does this lead to? Specialist, generalist. You're the guy that like the thing you're good at, wow, right? But the other stuff, you need people to take care of it.
Absolutely.
Right? For me, I need pull people for like everything. I'll get it all done, right? And people are like chasing me. So it's the opposite. Both lead to the same outcome. Could be fried with some substance abuse because of binging. It's not going to be, I need it every day on time or I get frustrated. You don't need it, but the day you get it, you can't stop. And for you, it's going to be very specific, particular. It's not, I need to drink. It's going to be this flavor of alcohol, this particular drink. Right?
You know what? I found exactly the science that you're talking about on a personal anecdotal level. When I was about 14, I got introduced to porn very early.
Yeah.
And a lot of men sadly do, which that's a whole nother conversation. Why are pornography on all devices 24/7, 365? That's a whole nefarious conversation.
Yeah.
But for me, once I found pornography, it was this deep breath. Maybe it was the serotonin, dopamine cascade that you're describing, but this clearance factor, I really want to hone in on the clearance factor that you found in my genetic test. And there's a snip of it on the screen right now for y'all to look at. When I was 14, all the way up, honestly, until my early 30s. So like 20 plus years of just battling pornography. And it wasn't until I just had a conversation with God, honestly, where I said, God, take this from me. I don't want this anymore. And I feel emotion about it right now because it literally ran my life. But if I would have known, or if my parents would have known that a DNA test was even a thing in, when I was 14, 1994, or even 2004, even 2024, if today, right now in 26, if we know something that we've never known about the way in which our body experiences hormonal cascades and clears them, then that can be a completely different conversation about addiction. Can we expand here about the clearing aspect that you found in my results? This is really important.
So that's exactly why does this all matter? Like somebody might listen and say, well, it's porn. I do it this way, you do it that way. It's
it matters because it's our quality of life.
Yeah, it's quality of life.
Yeah.
It's now when we have the genetic information, we know where to intervene, the actual switch that's broken, right? So if you generalize and use the word addiction or porn or drinking or whatever, right? Looking from the outside, it all looks the same. But the path that got somebody there is very different for different people. So for you, just like you said, clearance, it's very easy to take the MAO gene, the COMP gene that are slowing down your dopamine and speed them up to allow your brain to shift gears. Right now, you can't shift. You're stuck in what you're doing, which is great if you're reading a book, if you're binging on some project, it's incredible, right?
Yeah.
Difficult when it comes to something like porn, right?
Sure.
So a simple tweak would have been, mom and dad, don't watch the porn, or versus, let's just add this thing to speed up your COMP gene and you're actually able to move on. A supplement, SAMe, trimethylglycine. Add some trimethylglycine, COMP moves a little faster. Now you can actually move on to the next task versus binging. And for me, it's the opposite. I got to slow it down a little bit so I can actually stay focused. And there's other ways so the same gene, we now know the nutrients that speed it up and slow it down. So as opposed to using a blanket word like addiction, we can actually toggle the dials of what's getting you to that behavior. It's very specifically for each, and everyone's answer is different.
What are some other ways that people that struggle with the blanket term addiction, what are some other DNA markers or awarenesses that we can have when it comes to what's driving the real fuel for addiction?
So the big ones are the one we just talked about, the extremes on dopamine, not the middle, but the binger or the addict, that's you and me, right? The second one is coping mechanisms driven by trauma, right? And that is for you, we're actually both wired that way too, right? Which is the nervous system knows that high cortisol and stress and pain isn't good.
Yeah.
Right? It knows and it wants to get you out. And so coping mechanisms are a savior, but they're not meant to be triggered all the time every day. And so that leads to abuse, which looks like addiction. Then there's what we talked about earlier with the BDNF, the neuroplasticity, where there's deep meaning. This is why you often see that cliche of like the incredible research scientist that's also an alcoholic, right?
Sure.
Right? Because the same thing that leads into that, I think like this and I'm the world expert on it, also gives everything so much weight. I can't tolerate the world around me, right? And so they need to escape. So the escapism comes from BDNF.
This is probably what Alan Watts was dealing with.
Yeah.
Alan Watts killed himself from alcoholism.
Yeah.
Yet he was one of the greatest philosophers of our time. I wonder if we did a DNA test on him, if he had the clearance issue.
I'm sure you would find this, right? I'm sure. So when what I'm talking about now was meant to be everyone's superpower, right? And there's more, but these are definitely the three big ones. I give things too much weight and meaning. I can't cope with the world. I need to escape. I need a coping mechanism because I feel the past. Or the pleasure itself is taking over my mind. Either because I seek it all the time because I'm addicted, or when I start, I can't stop because I'm binging. Now, I can give you 10 others, right? But these are definitely the 3 big ones. And just, why am I saying this? Because what you just said, every high-performing person we see has the polar opposite kryptonite. The same thing that made them the world leader is also their potential, like knife edge could fall on the other side, right? So you see, celebrities that are at the top of their game lose their job and now they're suicidal.
Yeah.
You see CEOs at top of their game and all of a sudden they're alcoholics because something shifted. Because the same thing that made them reward seeking me, when they don't get the reward, start going down the pleasure route, they're addicted, right? That's what I meant when I said superpower and kryptonite. And imagine the empowerment of whatever's crushing you is actually your superpower. You just don't know what you're wired for.
So then through awareness and supplementation, through the DNA test, it's not going to take away from someone's drive in their specific lane. It's actually going to allow them to have it without its opposite. Am I hearing you correctly?
Yeah. So now, first of all, the perception is understood, right? So the blanket names aren't there. It's like very precise in terms of what got me there. And now it becomes a choice. Like it's as simple as this. If you have a high performance race car like a Ferrari, incredible. But go take it off road in the mud. What's going to happen? Yeah. It's going to fall apart, right? And if you have a beautiful truck and SUV and try and race on the track against a Ferrari, it doesn't work so well, but it's going to crush the Ferrari in the mud. So what are you? What is this power that you were given? And if you're using it wrong, it doesn't feel good. And you have 2 choices. You either use it right, or you add the thing that allows the epigenetic expression to match what you need to be doing. There's no right or wrong answer. It just depends on what your conditions are, what your needs are, right? And these things are very easy to do. You make your neurochemicals every single day in your sleep. So you can decide, I work with, for example, some sort of CEO types, right? And they need their, what looks like psychotic genes on when they're doing their job, right?
Yeah.
They need it on. They don't want to shut it off. They're not looking for a cure. But they're saying, what about Thanksgiving dinner, right? What about when I'm on holiday for a week? I can't do it.
I can't turn it off.
Can't turn it off.
Yeah, I
you
felt that.
But you can. Here is the exact supplement routine for the next day. You're going to wake up feeling different. Let me give you an example of that. So the thing that I said about you with BDNF, right? So you don't do a good job of neuroplasticity because there's something called epistasis where you have one gene kind of choking on another gene, preventing it from working. That happens inside. Some genes influence other genes. Great in terms of meaning, depth, high quality thinking. Maybe you're a bit slow to believe and accept because little skepticism, let's say, right? And then, but when you do, deep dive. So this trait, like I said, causes things to have more weight and meaning, which means if you have a room full of people like this, you're going to have a lot of friction, right? A lot of big opinions, a lot of, right?
Yeah.
So if you look at Finland, the Finnish people are almost consistently wired this way. They all have BDNF issues. But Finland is also voted the happiest country in the world. So those 2 things don't really reconcile so well. Doesn't that up, right? So when you look at the Finnish habits, they also have the highest use of sauna per capita in the world, right? Everywhere, every place, every home, right?
Yeah.
When you use a sauna properly, the right heat intensity, the right duration, the body gets confused and thinks you're dying, can't understand what the heat stress is about. And so it releases something called a heat shock protein to repair and regenerate what it doesn't understand. So it starts repairing and regenerating everything. New mitochondria, new cell repair, like it starts fixing, which is why there's all this data around disease prevention, disease reduction, right? And one of the things it does, because it doesn't know why you're dying, is it surges BDNF into your brain to give you neural repair, because maybe that's why you're dying. Can't figure it out, right? So now people from Finland, when they don't use a sauna, start to feel how they're genetically wired. The day is off. I don't want to talk to you anymore. Things are bad. Like, you know what? I'm just going to hit the sauna. Oh, I feel good. Let's go back to work, right? An entire population adopted this habit because when they don't do it, they don't feel good. They don't know why, but this is why. So now imagine that becomes the choice. It's like, I don't want to, in certain cases, you're binging on a book, you're doing a research project, that wiring is exactly what you need. Again, holiday for a week, you want to hit the sauna that whole week, right? Get the BDNF going and you feel different. And you can decide literally daily how you feel. If you understood which pathway was causing the feeling, then you can intervene.
Yeah, sometimes people can have a very strong intuition, and I believe intuition is this amalgamation of what the body is saying and what life experience has informed. So that's my definition of intuition. Intuitively, I do the sauna space every morning, no matter what.
Yeah.
But then when I got my DNA results, I was like, oh, this makes complete sense why I'm driven to sauna.
Yeah.
I didn't even know about the increased BDNF. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So then what are other ways in which we can start to alter lifestyle habits from people that find they have clearance issues from their DNA test?
So when you have clearance issues, just for me, the next path, if I was doing the detective work, is I'd start looking at the detox genes also, because these pathways are all redundant and overlaying. It's this science of this gene is this is gene. That's not how the body works. It's all interlaid, all interconnected, right? So if you don't clear well, you also want to know what's going on with toxins, because those are connected too. So the same COMT gene, we hear about this term methylation, right? And we don't really know what it is. So COMT is also the tail end of methylation. So think about methylation as like picking up all the garbage and bringing it to the door. Now COMT opens the door and gets it out. So somebody may go to a functional medicine doctor and they test their MTHFR gene, which is this big methylation gene, which is not the complete story. It's one piece in an entire system, but that's what somebody might do. And they're told, you don't methylate properly. No wonder you have inflammation. No wonder your child is autistic. You don't methylate properly. You don't clear metals properly, right? And they're saying, let's increase your methylation with some folate, some B vitamins, etc. And they feel worse. It's like, well, this doesn't add up. This should have, it's the exact thing I needed. Because if you think of individual genes and not the complete system, if you just took all the garbage and funneled it to a door that's shut because the COMT clearing gene isn't working, you will feel worse. You need to understand the whole pathway and intervene on all the broken pieces, right? So we start with the clearance first. If you're not pooping, peeing, sweating, and the clearance genes aren't working, where's everything going? Go ramp up your detox and you have a Herx reaction and get a headache and you have a migraine. Why?
I've had this before.
Yeah.
I've had a Herxheimer reaction.
Because you have the clog.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
I was at Runga, an event, and I was speaking on a panel.
Yeah.
And I had done high glutathione and high NAD.
Yeah.
And during the middle of our presentation, I felt like I was going to vomit.
Yeah.
And then after I was done, I projectile vomited and I was sick for like 2 days.
So there's two things going on. One, because all the gunk got pushed to the door without the clearance, you needed to open that up first. Second, there's a gene that determines how effectively you even use glutathione that you might add to your body. It's missing for you. You don't have it, right? So what happens when the GSTT1 gene, it's called, is the primary driver of glutathione activity in like the bloodstream, like the patrolling, looking for toxins in the blood, right? Once it got past the defenses.
Yeah.
That gene is missing for you. So now if you add glutathione and you don't have the genetic instruction telling your body what to do with it, yes, it's going to bind some toxins, but it's also going to bind minerals, vitamins, and nutrients that you need because it's not being instructed and you feel horrible. Fatigue, brain fog, no energy, body starts to reject it and you want to vomit, right? So the answer for you is you should never take glutathione, which nobody would ever say.
Yeah.
Right? So what you actually need are the precursors like N-acetylcysteine, glycine. There's something called ergothioneine, which is actually 36 times more powerful than glutathione, but doesn't need the pathway to be active, right? So there's other tools. And so this is where any question you ask around health and wellness can be personalized through your DNA. Any question, even NAD. There's an argument right now where NAD is the greatest thing you can do. Kardashians are on IV drips, so everyone wants to do it, right? Then there's this argument over NAD causes cancer. How is that? Like, where do you get these two sides of the story, right?
Yeah.
And this extreme, you'll hear in a lot of places. And this extreme always means there's some kind of bio-individual answer in the middle, right? The gap is both are true. That's why you can argue it all day long. So what makes it true? There's a gene pathway called FOXO3, and I didn't look yours up, but we can look it up, which is a sort of longevity anti-aging gene, which means as you're regenerating, so your skin, the cells are becoming senescent, mutating, they're dying off, and they're getting replaced with healthy new cells. That process is driven by FOXO3, this gene pathway, right? So how effectively you regenerate and repair tissue there's a few genes, but this is the main one. Now, if you do a bad job in that pathway and you add some NAD, it will feel incredible. It was the exact rocket fuel you needed to feel ideal, right? A gene can inform what to prioritize, what to do. Now, if you're doing a good job in that pathway, you don't need the tool and you go at it. Body didn't need it, already doing a good job, wasting your time and money on maybe there's something else you needed, like to open up your comp, for example, right? What's the byproduct of excess NAD in your body? It's glutamine and glutamate. And what are the primary fuels? The step one for cancer cells is sugar and glutamine. So now if somebody adds something to their body that creates excess glutamine, glutamine is a cancer fueling compound, right? It literally will fuel cancer cells. So both sides are true. Depends on someone's genetics. And something as simple as I'm going to go do NAD that you can go get anywhere without any safety check, without anything, can literally hurt somebody.
Yes, this is why some people take supplements. Like, for example, you and your friend that would drive to work and eat the same meals.
Yes.
I have 3 or 4 guys that we all do supplements. They're all, Sean Wells being one of them.
Yeah.
We'll do the sauna and we'll talk about supplements and all the fun things that you and I are talking about. And this phrase that I've heard for a long time, we've all heard it, that one man's medicine is another man's poison, is directly associated with what you're saying.
Yeah.
But that metaphysical spiritual teaching is pointing at the scientific understanding that you're bringing forth. Do you see the clear corollary on this, the poison versus the medicine? It's so prevalent. It's so prevalent, yet it's so unknown.
Yeah. By the time people get to us and my clinic, they've already been to every doctor, they've already been to every expert, whatever. And so they've tried everything and they're stuck, right? And our job is usually to detect the like Lyme disease, fibromyalgia, stage 4 cancer. Like where's the detective work to get them unstuck? And very, very commonly they're doing something that is the right thing to do if you look symptom down, that actually made them feel worse, that hurt them. Very consistently. It's nervous system, gut, and toxic burden. Those are the 3 big medicines today, I would say, that when I'm dealing with someone that's like nothing's working.
Yeah.
Right? You might have happened to land on the right stuff and it just worked out and somebody has the right glutathione genes, they took some glutathione, feels incredible, potentially, right? But for the people where things aren't working, I don't understand why I can't lose weight. Where do these headaches come from? My skin is never good. There's something you're doing that your genetics are saying that's not what we need.
Okay, on the screen right now, y'all, hackmydna.com/Josh Trent. We're going to be doing a webinar together, Kash and I, that goes deeper into this. So if this is already starting to make sense and you have questions, just go to that link that's on the screen right now. And we'll mention it a few more times during the podcast. One big piece that I think myself and all the people that I know struggle with is, why do I spend all this money with my supplement cabinet overflowing, yet I still feel like I'm not really optimized? It points down to the question of what is the actual genetics that are being activated by the epigenome. This to me is utterly fascinating when we look at longevity. There is probably, multi-billion-dollar industry for longevity, if not more. The longevity equation, when it comes to knowing thyself through the DNA, what is one thing that you see either medicine or science talking about that simply isn't true when it comes to the correlation between DNA and longevity?
So firstly, to your point, the longevity industry is going to be bigger than the healthcare industry.
Why is that?
It's the tools that are coming and the accessibility, so Goldman Sachs just came out and said that genetic therapeutics, just that one thing, genetic therapeutics is going to be a $4.3 trillion industry by 2030.
Damn.
One thing. The entire American healthcare industry right now is, I think, $4.5 trillion, right? So imagine just being able to turn something off. How empowering that is, right? So that's why it's going to be. So anyways, it's coming. There are so many things I can tell you.
What's the glaring overstated phrase that you know isn't true?
The big one that comes to mind is around the BRCA gene and breast cancer and cancer in general, right? And this is for the women and, by the way, for men in terms of prostate cancer. So if I were to walk into a room and talk about any of the 22,000 genes, most people have no clue what I'm saying. If I say BRCA, every woman raises her hand. They all know what it is. They've all been warned. The Angelina Jolie effect. Angelina Jolie gets tested. She cuts both her breasts off and you solve cancer, right? And the doctor that told her, cut your breasts off, if you were to ask him, how does BRCA cause cancer? He would not be able to answer the question because it's not true, right? And they're again, disease-centric thinking. Once somebody already has cancer, now you study the genes around cancer as a state, not what got them there. What's the reason? What's the cause? Because that's not health. That's not profitable, right?
Yeah.
So the BRCA gene is a tumor suppressor. It does not cause cancer. It's the primary tool your body uses to fight cancer. Ovarian cancer, breast cancer, testicular cancer, prostate cancer, the bigger ones, other cancers too, but those are the big ones, right? That it's of concern. So if you have a wrong version of the BRCA gene, not that you have the gene or don't have the gene, everybody has it. If it's not doing its job properly, the cancer will thrive and survive. Your you're not able to fight it, right? Nowhere in there is there cause yet. Now, I've worked on many, many breast cancer patients. Right now, you have this black box warning that was just lifted on hormone replacement therapy for women, right? It came out, I think, about a month ago. For decades, there was warnings. This could cause cancer. This could cause stroke. This could cause cardiovascular disease. Women, be careful when you're taking bioidentical hormones. They removed it and everybody celebrated, right? How do you go from this could cause cancer to remove the warning? How is it that the disparity in the gap, that's again bio-individual, that both are true. Both are true. So I did this breast cancer masterclass where there's a lady, she's a breast cancer doctor. She said all these people with second, third, fourth bout, like repeated breast cancer. So she's integrated, so she does a good job of helping them, but she's like, I need to know why, what's going on here. So 25% of the women that were in that class, I told them that the bioidentical hormones that they were taking caused their breast cancer. And that does not mean that hormones cause cancer. It means the wrong hormone protocol on the wrong genetic profile doesn't work. But every one of those 25% of women still could have taken hormones if it was crafted per their DNA the right way. Mm-hmm. So what was going on? Aromatization, the conversion of testosterone into estrogen. So whether you're a man or woman, progesterone turns into testosterone, turns into estrogen. Is a gene that drives each step. How much do you fill each bucket? Some women, the CYP19A1 gene converts or does this aromatization. They make way too much estrogen. So they're referred to as estrogen dominant, right? Step 2, which is not spoken of medically, and most women have never heard this. Once you make your estrogen, you then fill one of 3 estrogen buckets, 2-hydroxy, 4-hydroxy, or 16-hydroxy. These are metabolites, 16-hydroxy, right? So which metabolite bucket you fill is also determined by genes, how active they are, right? So it's kind of like plumbing and cascade, like where's it going? So suppose you're estrogen dominant and you happen to be going down the 4-hydroxy pathway, which happens to be an inflammatory form of the metabolite. Then we start to look at the detox pathways. Your glutathione pathway, your antioxidation pathway, methylation we mentioned earlier, glucuronidation. There's all these systems that are responsible to get this stuff out. Those might not be working and genetically predeterminable. So you might have the trifecta: dominant, toxic, don't detox. You're still making it and you're accumulating it. Now you get into menopause, period is gone, and the primary path of removal you don't have access to anymore. So the body starts to accumulate, but it recognizes it as an inflammatory toxin. And so it wants to keep it away from your organs, the danger zone. So where is the safe zone? Tendons, ligaments, which is why women in menopause get stiff shoulders, knee pain, back pain, but also your fat. Your body thinks fat is safe. So it deposits it in your fat, which is here and here, breast tissue, right? So you have this monthly deposit of toxic metabolite in your fat, which wouldn't have mattered until you added the wrong estrogen top of funnel that directly fuels the CYP1B1 gene pathway to make more of this 4-hydroxyestrogen, right? You could have taken something else. It's not that you can't. The wrong form, fueling that, overwhelming the production of it, creating inflammation to a degree where the milk ducts and milk glands, they're not like your lungs that are meant to be interacting with toxins, right? Damaged, oxidized, cancerous, clearly caused. You can see the path to the cause. Now BRCA is supposed to do something after all that, right? So should you cut your breasts off because of the BRCA gene? Young women are now being told, cut your fallopian tubes out to avoid ovarian cancer, right? But a man is never told, cut your penis off, right? They don't hear that, right? So, so now you can reverse engineer any chronic disease like this if you understood the pathology of the disease. What is it like? What gets you there? And then what gene drives each step? Now, the choices you make, test a 5-year-old girl, and I can tell you this about her. I could have told the 5-year-old girl, if you go do this, breast cancer, 90%. If you go do this, breast cancer, 5%, right? It's very, very clear if you understand what causes it.
It's like this blanket solution that Western medicine is doing. And I don't get the sense that it's inherently evil, but yet you have to think there's researchers at the highest level in academia and medicine that know what you know, yet it's not informing policy when it comes to what's happening in hospitals. Why is this?
So they know what we know about each gene. They've never tried to solve the problems we're solving, which is ask why. Remember, the research dollars are asking what? What is this disease and what pill can I make? So if that's your job, that's how you think, right? They don't even, and I know this because I run programs and courses, and usually 25% of the people, like I'm speaking to the public, right? But usually 25 to 30% of the people that enroll in my programs are clinicians, MDs, and genetic PhDs that already know more than I know, but don't know how to put the pieces together because they were never taught to think functionally. They were never taught that reversal and prevention is actually possible. They're just looking for the needle in the haystack. This gene equals that. I was doing this research project in Toronto with Sick Kids Hospital. There's a perfect example of this, where Autism Speaks gave Sick Kids Hospital $8.5 million and said, go find the cure, right? I said, there's no such thing. You went from 1 in 10,000 kids are autistic 2 generations ago to 1 in 500 to now 1 in like 30. We haven't changed. So is it a disease that we went from 1 in 10,000 to 1 in 30 to something environmental, something nutrition, something, or many of those things compounded are equaling neural inflammation? Is neural inflammation a disease, or is it just inflammation of the brain that then leads to behavioral development issues, right? So my job was to come in and do the functional side, and I showed it to them, and they realized that out of every cohort of 5 kids, they had these groups of 4 kids, 4 of them didn't have anything that should ever have been diagnosed. They don't have something that's a disease that should be called autism. They were injured for many different reasons, and we can get into all that stuff too, right? They were injured, and now you can start to solve the right problem, which is get rid of the inflammatory insult, whatever that is, and it's different for different people. Repair and regenerate the tissue, and you take a nonverbal kid to 3 months later is going to school. Did they have a disease? So this thinking, it's again not the researchers or scientists' fault. They believe that this is the path. They believe that everything is a disease where a switch got turned off, and their job is to turn the switch off. But that's not how it happens.
So what I'm getting from you, and I felt this for my whole life, and even in emotional epigenetics, DNA testing, even spirituality, mysticism, emotional capacity, emotional resilience, marriage, everything I'm 45, everything I've learned up to this point is almost 100% backwards. It is like the psyop of my lifetime, where everything that I know, I'm actually now in the midlife, I guess you could say, maybe more with the advent of AI and medicine and DNA testing. I could probably live well over 100 if I do it the right way. But I'm at this point in my life where I'm looking back going, wow, everything I've learned, I get to unlearn in a major way. And this is one of those things where when I look at the macro and the micro in society, gosh, I don't think these physicians have evil in their hearts. I don't think they want to do the children wrong. I think deep in their heart, they actually want to help the children, but they're using a false premise, a blanket for a very biochemical, individualistic child, that blanket doesn't apply to all the children. This is just like so sad, actually. Is that sadness or is that grief? Knowing what you know in some way, does that inform your fuel to do what you do?
Yeah, in a big way. So when I first started, who am I? I'm not a scientist, PhD, doctor of any sort.
But you have PhDs coming to your trainings.
Now, pre-COVID,
yes.
Pre-COVID, I would speak on stage, tell the story at some medical conference, and the first question was, what's your credentials?
Right.
Like, did you hear the words coming out of my mouth? Does that matter to you? Does it matter to you what I just said about the work you've been doing and what's possible? And does it matter more who it came from or what it is, what I just said, right? And to them, it mattered who it came from.
Yeah.
Post-COVID, everything has changed. Post-COVID, now it's like, I just want the information. I'm sick of what I do, right? And so that flip has, so in the beginning, there was a lot of friction, a lot of resistance. Yeah, some stragglers here and there would say like, I want to work on this. But now it's like they're running and saying that this doesn't work. I now understand. Please teach me.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
It's the belief system that they were taught from academia. Also, there's the sunk fallacy paradigm where they've spent 10, 15 years in medical school paying probably $300,000 to $500,000 in education. To look at that, Kash, and say, wow, all this money I've spent, this decade plus of my life that I've invested into being somebody that, quote, does not do harm.
Yeah.
To learn that one actually is doing harm is a really big gut check moment for these physicians.
Yeah.
That's a hard place to be. I have compassion for them.
Yeah. If you're taught that you are the sole conduit to truth, like it's you, right? And that you own the truth, and somebody has to come to you to sort of interpret it and filter it, and then it's not even true anymore.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so it's true for what it does, which is Let me make a check mark that the complaint is gone. The symptom is gone. And it's not even gone. It's just kept at bay. But never asking where did it come from? Because you're taught to believe that that's not even possible to ask where it came from. But now we know through functional medicine, that is what we should be doing. That's all we should be doing, right? A symptom, a disease is a check engine light. It's like investigate. You're doing something wrong. It's not the thing to solve. It's the emergency. Yes, let's like bring it down, tone it down. But why? How'd you get there?
So there's this phrase that I've heard, if you're holding a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? and many specialties of medicine or functional med or even alternative health, which is not alternative, it's actually now mainstream. If you're holding the DNA knowledge that you have, do you look at every health abnormality with that same hammer? Yeah. And if so, do you overlay other things like Chinese medicine and functional med on top of the DNA understanding?
I look at DNA through even just I'm talking to someone, I can't help it, I'm genoprofiling them, right? Their neurochemicals, like just understanding how to talk to them, and like just it's easy. Physical body type, I can predict hormones to a T.
Interesting.
Jawline, shoulder width, like it just tells me everything, right? So the phenotype or the physical manifestation is a result of the genotype. So you can reverse engineer that too, right? So yes, there's that going on. But I've also investigated other functional testing like the gut and organic acids and all that. That's all, yes, those are the filters I use. So when I'm talking to anybody and they tell me about how they feel, the wheels start turning around the functional insights, and there's an answer. There's always an answer, right? Yes. Somebody called me yesterday with multiple sclerosis. And again, you would think, okay, one day we're going to have a cure, right? And did some testing, and I told them this is a pathogen problem. There's certain pathogens in your body that cause neural inflammation that when you go to a doctor look like something that should be diagnosed as MS. And that's what just happened to you, right? So do you want to keep going to your doctor? Go ahead. I'm not a doctor to tell you not to, but I can tell you, let me clear these pathogens from your body and let's see how your nerves heal with some addition of maybe some regenerative peptides that help your nerves heal faster. There was a young lady I was dealing with in Toronto where I live, and she was diagnosed with ALS. Now, this is an area where it's like, there's no cure, right? We don't even know what it is. It's just progression towards neurodegeneration. And so she believed that's what she had. She was at the point where she was a nurse. She would work on her laptop during the day, but to move around, her husband used to carry her. Her legs were falling apart, right? No muscle mass. So she asked, her ask was very simple. Her brother was getting married. She wanted to be able to participate. Like, I just want to be able to walk around, dance, and not, sort of steal his thunder and that type of thing, right? So I started investigating her DNA, parking the ALS, never thinking about the disease, just seeing which biology is broken. And if I combine that with her habits, how does that equal the way she feels, right? So when I looked at her DNA, the big red flag was a detox system called glucuronidation, which is responsible for, academically, it's said it's responsible for hormones, right? But we know it's also responsible for certain biotoxins, which is not really taught. And so when I see this, again, missing copy number variation, this primary gene, UGTB17, which is a very important glucuronidation, didn't have the gene, missing. Very important glucuronidation gene, it doesn't exist. So I asked her, have you tested your house for mold? And she's like, no, why would I do that? She's like, because you're missing the primary pathway that removes mold. And there's certain mold spores like gliotoxin that will affect your brain, certain like aflatoxin cause systemic inflammation. And I think you have a mold issue. That's what your genes are telling me. This is one gene, but there's a few other things that were pointing to this, right? So she said, well, if that were true, what my husband and my two sons, they're fine, right? I said, well, let's test their DNA, right? And I'm going to show you that their glucuronidation, these same genes are probably ideal, and they were. So the same exposure. So then she agreed to test her home. We found mold. And then it happened. Her husband said, we actually had a leak in that location, but it was like 8 years ago. So why is this happening now? Context. Mold enter her body. She can't clear, right? Mysotoxins causing neural inflammation. What happened between now and 8 years ago? The introduction of 5G. 5G signals amplify mysotoxin production from mold 600 times in your body. Yeah. Not 600%, 600 times, right? So a perfect storm of they had a leak. She had certain specific mold spores. We then tested her. We found them, the exact ones that cause neural inflammation, right? at the time where 5G was introduced and she lived near a 5G tower. She didn't have ALS. You know, it looked like it. That's exactly what a doctor should have said.
Yeah.
Right? They were right to say that. But that, and how many people out there with Parkinson's, MS, that thinking this is who I am, there's something functional going on that we can actually do the detective work and figure it out and actually fix it.
This makes so much sense because some people can eat like 25 Oreos and grow another ab muscle. Some people can eat a perfect diet and they gain a bunch of weight. Some people can be exposed to mold in a hotel and be fine. And then the husband breaks down and has all these like Marcons and craziness. I had sinus issues for a long time in my life. And there's no doubt that my clearing agency that I'm learning through your DNA test isn't something that I get to not put all my attention to. The clearing not only of my serotonin and dopamine, but also the clearing of my toxin load. I love that analogy you said. If the door is closed, then you're just piling trash up against the door. That flies in the face of almost everything that people see or hear on social media when it comes to, you need to take this, you should do this. It also, in paradox, flies in the face of people that are more purist or zealous and say everything you need is inside you. Yeah. Which there is some truth to that. But if everything we need is inside of us, yet we don't know how the inside of us works on a physical level, well, then it's a partial truth. It's not the whole story. So you mentioned earlier the beliefs of these people that in medicine, they want to do good. How does belief impact our genetic expression? What someone actually believes about themselves? I know Bruce Lipton has gone very deep into this, as many other people in that field. But what is your take on the actual biology of belief and how beliefs can actually exacerbate physical symptomology?
So your body is relying on your thoughts to know what to do. And when I say thoughts, I don't just mean here. You know, your heart has 40 million neural cells that think through what we experience as emotion, right? That's a form of thought. Your gut has brain cells that think through instinct. And here's the crazy thing is your body knows that your brain will lie, but your emotion and instinct don't lie.
Absolutely.
Right? So it's going to rely on these two things to know what's true and what your beliefs actually are. And it will then react. Literally, biology will change instantaneously. Methylation, this thing that we talked about, that's a detox system. It does more than that. It's also a gene expression management system. So whatever shift just happened, you got angry, upset, you smelled the chemical, you got hungry, certain biology has to be upregulated to give you exactly what you need in that moment. So the methylation turns the volume on, right? Your beliefs here, here, and here will adjust constantly your biology to give you what you need. So you're telling your body what to do. There's work that I did around whenever we healed someone's nervous system, as a byproduct, other stuff got better. And there was these kind of miraculous outcomes, right? If you were just to look at it. And then I started to dig into that. And remember, I didn't invent this stuff. I just put the pieces together. So I could go and dig and kind of validate. And one of the things I validated was I learned after seeing it in front of me that the single biggest contributor to the expression of negative disease-causing genes is negative emotion. Stress, trauma, anxiety is the most powerful way to turn on a disease.
Shame is in there as well.
And shame, yeah. The number one contributor to longevity genes and turning off disease-causing genes is positive emotion. Love, pleasure, joy, right? Which we culturally poo-poo and feel guilty for even doing, right? Meanwhile, it's necessary, it's therapeutic to have love and pleasure and joy. It's needed every day. And so what do? We sit in the blanket and doom scroll at night to try and make up for it because your brain and body needs it, right? These, whether it's thought, belief, your emotions tell your body what's going on, and your body downstream will shift the biological priorities, and whatever's going on in here, it's not static. It's very dynamic based on what your body's responding to. Right.
One thing that I've been very clear on with everyone that's in our life method and in our Liberated Life tribe is this phrase that came to me right before I spoke at Dave Asprey's conference last year. And it was, our greatest freedom lies when our biology is not in argument to our reality. So in other words, my biology is informed by my reality, but yet my biology creates my reality. How do I have harmony between the two? Instead of feeling internally at war with whatever life brings me. It's kind of like the success dilemma where you see these multi-billionaires that are super successful. They literally have, Kash, everything that you could ever desire. They have everything, but they're fucking miserable. It's because their internal world is not a match to their external world. They have a belief set that believes they're not worthy, they're not loved, they're a piece of shit, whatever. This internal narrative, how does our DNA inform the belief set that we hold about ourselves? I understand there might be an upstream, downstream corollary anyways, where one might feed the other backwards, forwards. But from what you've seen and what you've experienced personally as well, and working with children and working with all these people worldwide, does the DNA inform the belief set of our own identity?
Oh yeah. So even the one gene we talked about a few times, BDNF, right? I find that people that are more religious, let's say, people that have deep set beliefs, like very rigid beliefs, have BDNF dysregulation because they don't do a good job of neuroplasticity. So the brain highly prioritizes the existing pathways. It makes them more robust and more resilient as opposed to like jack of all trades, right? And so you'll see people with like firm beliefs have bad BDNF genetics. And then people with a good BDNF genetics seem to be more adaptable, malleable, shifting gears, changing their mind, right? Because their brain just does that. It's like a spider web of neuroplasticity. So that's one specific one. But then if you put it all together, it's not just the neurochemicals, the various hormones and various, even metabolic pathways, all these systems overlay. So you might find somebody that has warrior genetics like me, but also is more androgen dominant, makes too much testosterone, which is also me, right? And so that warrior spirit gets amplified and their beliefs also get changed because of how their hormones drive their warrior spirit. So when you're more androgenized, you are more, let's say, reward seeking and seeking challenge, right? When you're more estrogenized, you're less of a warrior and more of a worrier. Let me sit back and think and plan and investigate as opposed to go do, right? So my beliefs are everyone's lazy, right? That's what I used to say. And I had a real struggle in my business because no one was ever doing enough, right? And meanwhile, it was me doing too much, which was actually breaking the business. My beliefs driven by my hormone genetics of being an exceedingly overwhelming warrior and my neurochemical genetics of it's never enough. And that and my adrenaline genetics of seeking challenge. And you put those all together and I believe that everybody is lazy, nobody cares, nobody tries hard enough, right? None of that was true. They were doing what was necessary. I was doing too much. So, and we can go deeper into other pathways, but yeah, every system does what it's supposed to do. Hormones do hormones, metabolism does metabolism, but they also influence the other systems.
Yes. Who would have known that BDNF is the fuel source for dogmatism?
Yeah.
I would have never thought that before.
Yeah.
Because you look at the way in which religion has, inherently it's done a lot of bad in the world. I also believe that it gives people some type of purpose. If you look at the Blue Zone study, one of the corollaries wasn't just the fact that they ate great food and they spent time with one another. It was that they had a belief in a higher power. So I think it's possible to have a belief and a faith in a higher power without it being dogma, which is where I align. Do you align in that way as well with faith, with connection to higher power?
Yeah, so I practice deeply. I'm a practicing Muslim, right? And so I grew up knowing that I was a Muslim, which meant don't eat pork. That's all I knew, right?
Okay.
Right? And so it was like when I'm with my friends, sorry, I can't eat bacon. That was religion to me. Then I learned that all the stuff that was taught, the dogma, which I didn't understand or value, it's like, why do I need to do this? There was a purpose for each one of those things. What you've been saying this whole time, the ancient wisdom that we lost that got replaced with chemical medicine that we're now getting back.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We think we're learning something new. We're relearning what we already knew. Right? So for example, I pray. And when I pray, I do it in a specific way. And now I know why I'm supposed to do it because it's grounding. The specific way I'm supposed to touch the ground is grounding, right? And in as much as like, do it this way, our mom's going to get mad, which is what religion used to be. Now I see there's wisdom in all these pieces. Fasting, I fast every year, right? And I didn't know it wasn't discipline and sacrifice. It was actually cleanup. It was maintenance, right? It was Alzheimer's prevention. It was insulin resistance reset, right? So when I approached it from that angle, which I didn't do until my late 20s, because I started to see pieces because I needed it, right? Now I dig into it. Now I dig in and I overlay current science with ancient wisdom and I see there's so much awesome stuff that we forgot,
What are the pieces of the Muslim faith that you connect to and what is the dogmatic pieces that you've let go of?
So if someone were to meet me, talk to me, spend time with me, they would not think I'm a religious person.
Yeah, I don't get that vibe from you.
Yeah. But I have a deep connection and belief. And where I would say for me, religion is gratitude. I live in a state of gratitude. And here's a really cool thing about gratitude. And this is another thing that I learned from it. Have gratitude, pray, be thankful, right? Which is, why? Well, that's a selfish God wants gratitude, right? The part of your brain that allows you to experience stress, anxiety, trauma is the exact part of your brain where you process gratitude and forgiveness. And your brain can't do both at the same time. So me regulating my nervous system, the practice of prayer and gratitude actually helped me shut off all the anxiety and stress, which I still go through as a warrior in business, right?
Yeah.
And so these little pieces, I keep learning that there's wisdom in them that we've lost, right? So for me, that's a big thing, is gratitude, forgiveness. I would say the other big thing is the more I explore the human body, the more I explore whether it's the microbiome, whether it's genetics, it's like, this is not a mistake. This is not a coincidence. This is design, right? It's too perfect and it's not something that we could possibly design.
Yeah.
And when I think about AI and all what we're trying to do, it's like, we're trying to build this, right? What is all this technology trying to get to? Something like this. This is artificial intelligence. This is optimal. It's organic, ultimate design, which we're trying to get to right now, metallically and mechanically, and eventually it's going to get to this, right? And so we have this perfection in front of us, and I'm just in awe of every time I study something new and see how a system interacts with another system. It's like, you can never, the rabbit hole doesn't end. It just doesn't end, right? And so I don't know what I'm going to keep finding, and that's the excitement for me, is like, this design that was given to us as a gift is also now my career. Right?
That's so cool. The paradox is that when someone is suffering with physical ailments that can be essentially healed through knowing your DNA and then also having certain protocols to address that, the ultimate paradox is that people that are suffering feel less likely to have gratitude.
Yeah.
But the paradox is that, by the practicing of gratitude, you mentioned the brain location where the two emotions live. There's so many paradoxes in this lifetime. It's like there's a paradox within a paradox. I wonder how you feel about this. The current evolution where we are in humanity, when you look at AI, when you look at, even if you talk about Moore's Law or Ray Kurzweil's work, or the hockey stick and AI passed years ago, there's this churning that I feel from unconscious capitalism. I do think that conscious capitalism is a really beautiful vehicle, but I think unconscious capitalism can really become a veil and a darkness that keeps people stuck, keeps people dampened. So what do you make of where we are now in human evolution with the advent of your technology? Well, your puzzle master that you did. You said you didn't create it, you put together the pieces. If you look at human evolution as to where we are now, what do you see as possibilities for 2, 3, 5 years from now?
Yeah, so I think this, like, the singularity that Ray Kurzweil talks about, it's coming, It's the momentum of all of what's going on. And we only see what we're allowed to see. I'm sure the technology that exists is, so where are things actually
There's an
at?
AI watching us right now somehow.
Yeah. So I think it is going to be somewhat of this singularity type thing where it's like, what is a human? I don't know what that's going to look like in 10 years, right?
Yeah.
So I would say, this is why for me, understanding and controlling my biology is such a big deal, even more so now. I don't want to be dependent on a system, right? I want to have sovereignty. And so sovereignty comes from not ever needing to solve a problem, preventing the problem, right? How long will we live? Human design is 120 years. We're designed as a physical structure to last 120 years. That's our potential if you do everything right. Right. And doing everything right is more so about not doing things wrong.
Yeah.
Right. Not doing things that take years away. Even if you just start there. Right. So for me, it's understanding biology to, like, whatever's coming, to not need it.
Where do you think the place of peptides are? Peptides are massive right now.
Yeah.
The GLP-1s, the triple agonists, whether it's retatrutide or whether it's, BP157, longevity, inflammation, weight loss, etc. There's the same blanket thing happening where everybody with their own unique biochemical individuality is being fed that they should take this one peptide and it'll heal everything. Yeah. It's the same kind of blanket approach with the peptide industry that we're seeing right now. How would one know, based on their biochemical individuality and their DNA test, which peptides are good for them and which peptides may be deleterious for them?
So I've done that work with the sort of the main menu that you hear about, but also some of the more obscure peptides that people haven't heard about, both for what does the DNA inform you need and what does DNA inform might hurt you. And if it may hurt you, it's maybe just a question of dose. And then it's a question of protocol, like putting them all together and stacking them. How do we do that? So right now, the peptide world is driven by sort of bro influencers, right? A big part of it,
Yeah.
right? And so there's a lot. It's all true. The peptides do what people say, right? When you start putting them together and when you start solving health problems, that's where there's more knowledge needed than just, hey, bro, here's a peptide, right? And so I have done that work. I've been doing it for the last year, and I can tell you that it's far more complex than just going online and buying a peptide. If you have one thing for one, like I have an injury, inject some BPC, no problem, right? Once you start stacking 2 or 3 or 4 things, there's a high level of personalization needed.
Right.
And what do you need? The dosing, the stacking, the duration, the frequency, the time off. It's not as simple as here's a peptide chart, follow this. There's personalization needed. And then there's some really cool peptides that are not your common stuff where, for example, there's a system in your body called myostatin. And myostatin is the genetic cap to how much muscle you'll build. So when we say that person's gifted, it's true. There's certain levels of muscle you can actually get stuck at and then you plateau, right? So there's a peptide. So this actually started as a genetic therapy. So there's a group in Ecuador called MiniCircle that they're funded by Peter Thiel that has an actual genetic therapy that you did an injection once a year and you just start burning fat and growing muscle. And it's an anti-aging therapy. Dave Asprey's done it, Ben Greenfield, Brian Johnson flew down there, made a big YouTube video about it. They charge about $30,000 and you get this injection annually and it makes you look good. That's why all of a sudden, about 2 years ago, Dave started taking topless pictures. Right?
Yeah.
Before that, you never saw his abs, right?
Sure.
It's because of this therapy.
I'm sure he's not trying to hide that either. He's very open about it.
Yeah. Oh, no, he talks about it. Yeah. He actually helped bring it to light. He was one of the first, right? So now that technology, you can't do it here and it's expensive. So I figured, can we actually use a peptide, a signal to do the same thing? And you can. And I've used it. And we've seen that in muscular dystrophy patients, don't change another thing, and they have a 20% increase in muscle mass. And so now you can have this myostatin lift, you lift the cap, and the body just starts developing more muscle and bone, by the way, and skin. It doesn't work on tendon and ligament, but it works on hard tissue, not soft tissue, right? And so there are things like that are coming that people don't know in the pipeline. There's some crazy peptides. Like, what is a peptide? It's a signal.
Right. It's just a chemical messenger.
Yeah, it's a messenger. So there's so many other messages from DNA that we've been studying that we now know we need to amplify through the right peptide. So I'm discovering what are the right signals to work on, right? And there's some really cool stuff coming.
Okay, on the screen again, y'all, because I promised you, hackmydna.com/Josh Trent. What are we talking about in this webinar? It's probably a synthesis of many things you've brought forth, but what exactly is the webinar about?
So I think it's 2 big things. First of all, like we've been talking about everything all over the place, right?
Not really. It's been pretty solid.
Yeah.
Yeah. If y'all are following, then this is the next step.
Yeah. So how do we synthesize this into like a plan, right? What's my process? So I would walk everyone through my actual process. But I think the really cool thing about being live on a webinar is Q&A. Like anybody wants to ask questions,
right.
Let's do it. I'm there, right? Yeah. So live Q&A, come with whatever, any problem, anything we said today that you want to dig deeper into, live Q&A, which we don't get to do, right? So that's, I think, the big thing we'll do that day.
Okay, great. Yeah, because this personalization makes so much sense because we're people. You and I are so biochemically different. You and your friend who launched the company eating the same meals, totally different symptomology with the same lifestyles. Literally, we cannot keep going forward like we've done. And the beauty is we don't have to.
Yeah.
We live in such, do you ever just, like, thinking of gratitude, do you ever just feel so fortunate to be born at this time?
Oh, yeah.
Where this technology even exists? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Our great-grandparents would have been knocked on their ass with gratitude.
Yeah.
They were in survival. The warriors from Afghanistan that's in your lineage were just trying to survive, let alone thrive and learn about their DNA. We're so fortunate, Kash. We're so fortunate.
This is why I do what I do. My dad died when I was 17, right? So he died, left us with debt. Not his fault. He was actually very sick. I only knew my dad as being sick. I never saw him healthy, right? And so I had to take care of my mom, had to take care of my sister. I started working, started building businesses, and I became an entrepreneur unintentionally. even though I didn't know I was genetically wired for it. It just happened to work out, right? And so when I had my kids, that's when I got sick, right? And I saw like it just hit me, right? It literally hit me like, this is exactly, I don't want my kids to go through the same thing. So I shifted from never going to a doctor. You know, what's the average man's story? Until your arm's falling off, you don't even go to the doctor, right?
Sure.
So I didn't bother into like literally living and breathing health and wellness as a concern, like just learning it all day long. And it's a bit of an obsession because of, call it the trauma of my dad, right? But more so my kids. I just didn't want them going through what I went through. And then it became a tool of helping people, and, you know, and then getting, like I said, my mom back to work, my niece back to work. And it turned into purpose. It's just what I do.
Yeah. There's a lightheartedness that you have about it, though. It's kind of a serious world at times that you operate in. There's the Cartman drama triangle, which is the victim, the villain, and the hero. I don't get that you're the hero. I don't feel that from you, that you're here to save people, but I'm sure you felt that at times, where you might be here to save people, but then that's an unhealthy fuel substrate, because when you're always trying to save people, you get exhausted. Yeah. So how have you, on an emotional level, understood that you're not here to save people or to fix broken people, that you're here to actually just guide people? Yeah. How has that intelligence come through for you, where you don't fall into the trap of being the hero?
It's really cool that you said that, because this is only possible because I use genetic information. So why does this matter? And this is the first thing I'll tell people that work with me on a program, or like a pro athlete that says, I tell them, you're used to somebody telling you. You're used to hiring an expert to tell you.
Yeah.
DNA is the only thing that doesn't change. The DNA you're born with is the DNA you die with. So I'm going to teach you. I don't want to tell you. If I've done my job, you never need to call me again. Because this tool, it will always be the same tool with the same document to read. Just different questions, different stage of your life, different problems, different opportunities. So that in itself is who I've become, is exactly what you just described. When we start a program with any group of people, I'll tell them, you are here to become sovereign, not to become dependent on me, right? And that's how I know I did my job. And it's only possible because DNA is permanent, doesn't change. And that's why I'm not the hero, I'm just the messenger, right?
Helping people on how they can become a better messenger for themselves.
Yeah.
Man, I really appreciate the work you do in the world. It's on the screen again, y'all. hackmydna.com/Josh Trent. Join us on the webinar. I'll be there as well. Let's make sure that we share this with people that are struggling, that literally do not have to struggle.
Yeah.
They just simply don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
This field of epigenetics, this field of DNA understanding, you know, there was the whole stuff that happened. What was that company where the woman went to court because she was lying about the DNA?
Theranos,
Theranos.
Blood test,
There's been kind of a stigma, and I don't know if it was unintentional or intentional by Western medicine. The fact that this type of technology isn't the very first thing that a physician does with their patient is mind-boggling to me. I just cannot understand why you wouldn't start with the blueprint first and then work with the downstream. So y'all join us. Is there anything you feel like we missed when it comes to the understanding of why we get to do DNA testing, or the how, or even the metaphysical macro of how this can be so powerful for so many people across the world? You think we missed anything?
No, I mean, the overarching, you know, sort of answer is everything is optional. Like chronic disease is not coming. It's not, I have breast cancer in my family. You have some biological failure, yes, in your family, combined with the choice. And now we need to know what is that choice. So the pace at which you age, your current energy, libido, hair, skin, wherever you're measuring, and whether or not you have a chronic disease, all optional, if you understood what caused it. And we, like you said, didn't have the choice because we didn't have the tools, right? Yeah. The technology is now easy and cheap. Like Dave Asprey, he was one of my first investors that funded the research, right? Why? I arrived at a conference and I said, please spit in this tube. He's like, who the hell are you and what's going on here, right? And I just followed him around until he would do it. He's like, I don't need this. I went to Germany. I did a full $50,000 full genome sequence, and I spent 3 days there. I said, I promise you, I will tell you more in 1 hour than you learned in 3 days. And when I said that, he immediately went on Instagram Live, started spitting in the tube. So in 1 hour, he said, yes, I learned more than I learned in 3 days. And why am I saying this? Because the technology is not $50,000 anymore, right? Yeah. And that $50,000 technology, it didn't even work, right? It was like looking for rare needle in the haystack type stuff. So everyone has the ability to be health sovereign and have make disease and the pace at which you age optional.
So you feel like where we are now in technology for DNA understanding and synthesis is the best it's going to be, or is it going to get even better?
So the sequencing is going to get better, right? What each gene means and does is going to get better. Like there's a whole, I mean, we have another half an hour conversation just on this.
Okay.
Which is right now, what do we do when we sequence a gene? We're looking at the spelling, right? Here's a gene, it's thousands of letters long. And somewhere there's a spelling mistake, the SNP or the variant, and now the gene functions different. Now we're looking at DNA more multi-dimensional, and we're even seeing that, you know, the DNA is like a double helix, this twisted ladder, right?
Yeah.
And the location of that SNP in reference to other SNPs, they start to influence each other. And we're seeing it as more of a 5D puzzle.
Is that almost like the superposition in quantum computing?
Is it
similar?
Yeah. We need quantum computing to understand it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's because it's not linear. It's not 3-dimensional. It's like 5-6 dimension.
So wild.
And this is what I mean about every time I dig, there's more to learn.
Yeah.
And the human body is just, it's unbelievable.
Well, it doesn't have to be overwhelming. Thank you for making it simple. Thank you for being my guest.
Pleasure,
Y'all
man.
share this podcast. Seriously. Can you imagine, you guys, if this tech existed 20, 30 years ago, like it does now, how many people could have shortened the learning curve on their suffering? It's just like, wow, how could we not do this, right? It's such an easy building block. So from my heart to yours, thank you for being here with me, Kash. This is round one of many. You guys go to liberatedlife.com and we're going to spend 5 minutes just going a little bit deeper into my profile, but it's going to be there for you. So head over to liberatedlife.com, join the tribe, get the 10-day blueprint to understand yourself. There's no doubt in my mind that this DNA test is going to be a part of the blueprint now. Every time I interview a guest that I think is really doing something meaningful, I will actually add it to our 10-day process for identity transformation. One with finance with Elizabeth Ralph, one with you for DNA testing and understanding the physical self. But until we see you again on another podcast, or until you see Kash and I in these quick 5 minutes that we spend together in the tribe, I'm wishing you love, wellness, but most importantly, peace and power. You cannot have power unless it comes from peace. We'll see you next week.